Part 93. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 921. Chapter 921 Su Tang beats the child. Unfortunately, the live broadcast resumed the next day and the wedding was held as normal. When Su Tang saw the two of them exchanging rings and kissing each other, her heart felt like thousands of ants were gnawing at her. She could no longer control herself, so she picked up the vase on the table and threw it at the TV. There was a crash, and the vase was shattered into pieces, but the TV was intact. On the screen, Li Lei was speaking love words to Xiaoling, "I will always love you, take care of you, and protect you. No matter where you go or what you become, I will always be with you and never leave you." Xiaoling smiled sweetly, as if she was the happiest woman in the world. Su Tang angrily went to the kitchen to find a watermelon knife, turned around and slashed at the TV. Under her fierce attack, the TV screen finally shattered, sparks flew out, and there was no sound. She still didn't understand her hatred, so she slashed at the TV countless times, until it turned into a pile of broken parts whose true appearance could not be seen at all. Then she dejectedly let go of the watermelon knife and knelt down weakly on the ground. Airplane. Fly, 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 dash. Suddenly, a child's voice rang out. It was Li Rui who broke in with a model airplane, yelling something randomly while running around the room, simulating the appearance of an airplane flying. Da. Li Rui shouted, his feet making a heavy sound when he stepped on the solid wood floor. The pile of ruins of TV sets was particularly interesting in his eyes. He threw the plane up and stood tall. He shouted, the plane flew up the mountain. The plane fell down. The plane is dead. It's dead. It's dead. La la la. Su Tang was so annoyed that she raised her head and glared at him fiercely, yelling, get out. Touch. Li Rui didn't listen to his mother at all and continued to have fun with the airplane on the hill made of TV wreckage. He grabbed a handful of broken parts and threw them towards his mother, bump, bump. Fighter. Fighter number 5 is ready to fight. Cannon. Bump, bang, bang. A piece of spare parts hit Su Tang, which was very painful. Her arm was immediately bruised and swollen. Su Tang looked at this incompetent son and recalled the little Xiaowai he had just seen on TV. The child was dressed in a white suit. He was very beautiful and pretended to be majestic. He was so cute. But what about this one at home? So uneducated. Why is there such a big gap between the same 5 and 6-year-old children? She lost to Xiaoling, and her son also lost to Xiaoling's son. An indescribable anger rushed into Su Tang's heart, and she slapped Li Rui, trash. I told you to fly. I told you to fly. I told you to fly. The slap was so hard that Li Rui screamed. The sound comes. Li Rui didn't know why his mother hit him, but he was used to being lawless. At this time, while struggling, he also hit his mother with his small arms and hands. Bad mom. Bad mom. I hate you. Hit mom on the plane. Su Tang was even more angry. He threw him to the floor and beat him all over his head and face. Li Rui resisted at first, but after all he was just a child, how could he be an opponent of an adult? Not long after, Su Tang was beaten until she cried and begged for mercy, it hurts. Mom, stop hitting me. Bad mom. Don't hit me. Wow, wow, wow. His cries of ghosts and howls of wolves shocked the earth and the earth. Su Tang became agitated for a while and struck harder. Gradually, Li Rui's small figure disappeared from her eyes, and the grievances she had suffered over the years emerged in front of her eyes. The first time she met Xiaoling, her delicate and distant face made people want to tear it apart. I saw Li Lei feeling sad for her. I saw Li Lei covering her with a quilt when she was sleeping. I also saw how Li Lei missed her every night during those 4 years abroad. Later, the two remained inseparable and agreed to get married. "I'll beat you to death. I'll beat you to death." Gradually, Sutang burst into tears, blurring his vision, but his eyes became more and more ferocious. Mistaking Li Rui for Xiaoling, her attacks became more and more ruthless and severe. At first, Li Rui could howl a few times, but gradually he couldn't even cry, couldn't run away, couldn't beg for mercy, and lost his voice. When the servants heard the noise and hurried over, they were startled. I saw Sutang beating Li Rui like crazy, while the little child huddled up in a ball, and there was a shocking pool of blood on the wooden floor under him. They hurriedly pulled Sutang away and rushed the child to the hospital. Li Lei received the news that afternoon at the lawn banquet after the wedding. A subordinate hurriedly walked up to him and whispered to him. Beside her, Xiaoling tilted her head slightly and asked, "What's wrong?" Li Lei smiled and said, "It's okay. You can bask in the sun first and drink some fruit wine. I'll go see if the helicopter that will take the guests home later is ready." Xiaoling nodded and watched him go. Li Lei walked a few steps and reached a place where Xiaoling couldn't see him, then asked his subordinate, "How is Li Rui's injury?" The subordinate said, "The situation is very serious. We are still rescuing her. She is not out of danger. Sister Sutang's condition is not good either. She has not eaten or drank since she was discovered. She has no expression and does not speak. No one cares about her. It seems like he can't hear anything. The doctor suspects." The subordinate hesitated. "What do you doubt?" Li Lei asked. "I doubt whether Sister Sutang's mental condition is normal. I suggest taking her for a comprehensive mental examination." The subordinate couldn't bear it. "Master, do you want to go see her?" These subordinates have been close friends with Sutang since many years ago and have a deep relationship with him. They all knew in their hearts that Sutang, who had always been so dignified and elegant, would go insane. Wasn't it because he was stimulated by the young master's marriage? Even though Xiaoling is a good woman, many people still sympathize with Sutang in their hearts. Li Lei's face turned cold. "Awang, you know what day it is today. But, Sister Sutang is like that, young Master Rui's life or death is also uncertain. I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist, so what will happen if I go there?" Li Lei was unmoved. "You go contact the best experts and save Li Rui at any cost. As for Sutang, find someone to stay with you 24 hours a day. I will take care of her personally. These days, if there is no big change in the situation of their mother and son, don't bother me, let alone Xiaoling. Give me an order. If anyone spreads the news to Xiaoling's heirs, I will kill him." "Nice." The subordinate was very reluctant, but had no choice but to leave. Li Lei picked up a glass of wine from the passing waiter and took a sip, his eyes searching for Xiaoling among the crowd on the lawn. She changed into a dress, with a light rose gauze fairy group, and her slim figure looming, so beautiful that people can't take their eyes away. She also held a glass of wine in her hand and was chatting and laughing with Baimurong and Lugo Lugo. Lugo Lugo held her arm affectionately and was gesticulating something. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 922. Chapter 922. The Little Guy Who Snitched. She looked very happy in the sunshine. Li Lei's eyes softened unconsciously. In order to protect her peace and beauty, he could just let him worry about the troubles outside. The wedding process went smoothly. After sending off the guests, the two took a helicopter to the Li family headquarters. After being welcomed and congratulated by everyone at the headquarters, they moved into the new house that had been repaired not long ago. The new house was built by Xiaoling in order to be far away from Sutang's residence. Now it stands quietly near the mountains and the sea. It is surrounded by bamboo forests and the blue sea and sky nearby. It is extremely beautiful. She looked at her new home and felt very happy. She put her arms around Li Lei's neck and kissed him again and again. Li Lei smiled fondly, do you like it? Come and stay more often in the future. Okay, she didn't hesitate at all. Deep down in her heart, she knew very well that since Li Lei was already the head of the family and could not leave such a huge piece of property behind, they would have to move to the headquarters sooner or later. Now Li Lei just postponed the relocation plan because of her career. But she couldn't delay him forever for her own sake. Managing the industry is different from Bideo. It is an adventure walking on a tightrope. A slight mistake will lead to disaster. As for singing, that's a more personal thing. Where is singing and not singing? Xiaoling thought about this question for a second, then kissed him passionately. Little Xiaowai stretched out his paws to cover his eyes. Really, his parents didn't even care about him as a little kid, huh? He covered his eyes and looked out from between his fingers. He was so envious, his parents have such a good relationship. When he grows up, he will also find a beautiful wife who loves each other. The little guy peeked for a while and went to explore the new house. Xiaoling, Li Lei, and Xiao Hui stayed at the headquarters for a while. Li Lei took the time to deal with a few important matters, and then the family of three happily embarked on a honeymoon trip around the world. Why a family of three? Originally, Li Lei had no intention of taking little Xiaowai with him. It was so difficult for them to live in a world of two, so why would he take this little oil bottle with him? But Xiao Xiaowai refused. He ran to Xiaoling with snot and tears, crying that his father didn't want him. Xiaoling cried so hard that she agreed on the spot to take the child with her. This time it was Li Xiaoli's turn to cry. But, 2-1, his crying has no effect. The melancholy classmate Li Xiaoli had no choice but to take his son on the road with him resentfully. The family mainly traveled to some small European countries, and they always chose places where Xiaoling's songs had not been released, so no one could recognize her. Xiaoling rarely enjoys the days when she is not chased and intercepted by paparazzi. She is very happy. She has gained some fat and her cheeks are moister than before. More than a month passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, it was time to return. On this day, Xiaoling was dressing up in the mirror alone in the sea view room of the hotel. Xiao Xiaowai ran in and climbed onto her mother's knees with her hands and feet. Mom, Mom, he said with his face raised, I'll tell you a secret. What secret? Xiaoling smiled, put down the horn comb in her hand, and looked at her son. In the morning light, the child's soft eyelashes blinked and whispered, when I just went to the woods behind to find berries to eat, I heard my father calling. It seemed that Aunt Sutang and Xiao Rui were sick. Xiao Rui was sick. It's very serious, I miss my dad very much. Xiaoling's heart skipped a beat. What happened this time? She asked the child, what else did you hear? The child shook his head, no, by the way, I also heard my father telling them not to tell you. Why didn't Li Lei tell her? Xiaoling thought about this question in her heart for only a second, and soon decided to ask him directly. After experiencing so many ups and downs, she no longer suspected anything. She said softly to the child, then why did you come to tell Mom? The child blinked and said, because Mom asked me to treat Xiao Rui as my biological brother. If something happened to his younger brother, of course he would come and tell his mother. Both the Du family brother and his private tutor told him that brothers in a big family must be friendly and harmonious, otherwise a little unhappiness will cause big trouble in the future. Xiaoling touched his little head. To be honest, she didn't regret letting Xiao Hui treat Li Rui as her own brother. After all, the child was innocent, and she didn't want to embarrass Li Lei. She said to Xiao Xiaowai, Mom will ask Dad if she finds out. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Li Lei's voice coming from the door, have you learned how to tell a snitch? The mother and son turned their heads and saw the man's strong figure leaning against the door, deliberately looking fierce, but unable to hide the slightest smile deep in his eyes. It's Dad, Xiao Xiaowai shouted and hurriedly covered his eyes with his hands, I didn't tell the truth. You can't see me, you can't see me. I also learned to lie. Li Lei couldn't help laughing this time, walked forward, picked up the little guy's back collar, and held him in his arms. Brother Du Zheng told you last time that the brothers were going to get along, yes or no? Shea Y has a little head. Li Lei asked, did he say why? Xiao Hui replied softly, Brother Du Zheng said that I will inherit the entire family in the future. I want everyone to obey me, listen to my words, and work hard for me, so I have to be good to them from an early age. After thinking about it, he added, and I think if I am good to Xiao Rui will fall in love with her mother sooner or later. He knew that Li Rui had always hated his mother, and it would be great if he and his mother could live in harmony. Li Lei smiled and twisted his little face. Have you never thought of other ways to deal with it? Huh? Xiao Shaiyi looked confused. Li Lei said, it's true that you want everyone to obey you and to want everyone to like the people you cherish. But is the only way to do it is to be nice to them? The child looked at his father, then turned to look at his mother. Xiaoling silently looked at the sky and the air, and thought to herself, I'm sorry, Shaiyi, my mother can't save you. The kind of test questions your father gave you at short notice is a matter between the heirs of your family, and it's none of my business. Child. Li Lei, can't think of anything. Xiao Shaiyi shook his little head honestly. Li Lei sat him down on the bed and began to educate him. There are many ways to do it. Making him appreciate you and worship you is just one of them. You can also make him be afraid of you and dare not mess with you, or make him disappear forever. In this world his tone gradually turned serious, a little scary. Xiaoling shuddered silently, but did not stop Li Lei. She understood that there were some things that big men like them had to come into contact with. In this world full of wealth, with Xiao Hui's status and people's expectations for his future, if he was too kind and weak, he would undoubtedly be the one who killed himself. Take destruction. Yingying has been in a bad state recently. She had been sleeping all night for more than half a month, probably because she was writing articles until late at night every night. Therefore, I have been adjusting recently and strive to wake up every day to write articles. I have been updating in the early morning these 2 days, and my sleep has gradually returned to normal. I didn't wake up until 5 o'clock in the morning today, which is much better than before, but I have been writing from 5 a.m. to now, which means it took about 6 hours to write 6,000 words, which is almost my daily speed. Therefore, in order to resume updating on time and quantity, there will be no updates tonight and tomorrow morning. The next update will be at 20 o'clock tomorrow night, 3 updates at a time. From now on, I will write articles during the day and update 3 times at 20 o'clock in the evening. You don't have to wait so hard. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 923. Chapter 923, Each generation becomes more powerful than the next. Xiao Shaiyi lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then, he raised his head and looked at his father. I can still tell my mother about this secretly. No, uncle, my mother was too stupid to handle such a complicated problem. Let my uncle take advantage of Aunt Sutang and Xiao Rui if they are seriously ill, kill them and that will be the end of it. The child's voice was soft and waxy, but the words he spoke were thrilling. Li Lei smiled. Well, it's a good idea to find your uncle. However, your uncle's family believes in destiny and rarely interferes in such mundane matters. He may not be willing to help you. Xiao Hui thought the same thing. If his uncle was willing to take action, Aunt Sutang and Uncle Li Feng would have died long ago. How could it be his turn to be like this? His little brows wrinkled sadly, and he thought about his fingers for a long time. Uncle Arnold and the others are all father's people, and they will definitely tell Dad. Hurry, he found that he couldn't find anyone he could trust around him. Lilei smiled again and looked at him with approval. I'm very happy that you can exclude Arnold and the others. Before there is a sure way, it is better not to move than to alert the enemy. What should we do? The child raised his little head and looked at his father. Lilei said, first, you must cultivate your own power. You must know that even your father's power may not be of use to you sometimes. You must have someone who is only loyal to you and willing to sacrifice his life for you dead soldiers. Second, when the time is not ripe, you can only outwit the enemy. For example, this time, you can pretend to stand still, but secretly provoke Xiaorui. Xiaorui is simple-minded and has a bad temper. It is easy to if you are provoked to do something that people don't like, you can think of ways to make your father hate him more and more, or even think of ways to make him and Aunt Sutang less and less harmonious. One day, you will get what you want. Result. The child understood and nodded. Xiaoling looked at the father and son. Despite the content of the conversation, she was actually very moved. She knew that Lilei had never taught this to Li Rui, otherwise, that naughty child would not be as mindless and untutored as he is now. But he taught Xiao Hui everything he knew, and even told Xiao Hui that you have to have your own power and dead soldiers, even if they are loyal to father. Even if they are biological father and son, how many biological fathers can do this? She was very pleased that the two men she loved so much got along so well. Lilei was very satisfied with the little guy's understanding and touched his little head. I'll give you chicken drumsticks for dinner. Xiao Shaowai was very happy, clapped his hands and said, okay, the chicken drumsticks made by Dad are the best. After a pause, he asked Lilei worriedly, is Xiaorui okay now? Lilei Xiao, now that you know so many ways to deal with Xiaorui, are you still worried about whether something will happen to him? Xiao Shaowai said seriously, he is my brother, and my mother said that I should treat him like a biological brother. As long as I can live in harmony with him, I will not use those cruel methods to deal with him. Unless the relationship between us it has reached the point where it cannot be repaired, and as a last resort, we can only kill Xiaorui. Add 2 chicken drumsticks. Lilei smiled happily. He is deeply proud of his son, who knows how to distinguish right from wrong at such a young age, and who has his own independent ideas and is not swayed by authoritative opinions. What's even more rare is that he is not pedantic. If the time comes when he has to use iron-blooded methods, he will not show mercy. This is almost a perfect heir. Lilei smiled and ruffled his son's short hair. Xiaoling also laughed, why are you so happy? This little guy is so capable. Be careful about usurping your position in the future. Come on, Lilei didn't feel dissatisfied at all. I didn't want to do it a long time ago, little Shaowai. You have to become more powerful quickly, you know? It's best to defeat your father and seize the power yourself, just like your father took away the power of your grandfather. Generation after generation, the heirs of our Li family will become more powerful. That's great. Then Dad can retire early, travel around the world with your mom every day, and give you a lot of younger brothers and sisters. Who wants to give you a lot of children? Xiaoling blushed and spat at him. Lilei smiled shamelessly. Little Shaowai is also very happy. It's great to have a lot of younger brothers and sisters. The family had a quarrel for a while, but Xiaoling was still concerned about the situation of Sutang and Li Rui, so she asked Lilei for details. Lilei said to her as concisely as possible, you and I are married. Sutang couldn't stand the stimulation. His depression relapsed and he also got mania, which beat Xiaorui half to death. Now, Xiaorui is living in the hospital recovering from his injuries, and Sutang Tang is also in the hospital for treatment of bipolar disorder, and I plan to visit them after our honeymoon. After all, Sutang was his savior, and this illness was also caused by him. During the wedding period, He could take Xiaoling's feelings into account and not visit their mother and son, but when the honeymoon period was over, he should go and visit them. Now that Xiaoling already knows, he doesn't intend to hide it from her. It's not easy for the two of them to work hand in hand until today. Some things are better to be honest. Xiaoling nodded to express her understanding. She felt a little uncomfortable in her heart, but it was not for Li Lei, but for the lingering woman. Xiao Rui is quite pitiful. She looked at her cute little Xiaowai. Ever since she had a child, her maternal nature has been overflowing. How could any mother be so cruel as to beat her own son to death, seriously injured? Li Lei also felt that Su Tang had gone too far this time. Ordinarily, if he is not my biological son, I should not care about him. But no matter what, Xiao Rui also called me daddy. He was hurt so seriously. There is no way I would not care about it. Su Tang, if I still can't accept the reality, I can only find another guardian for Xiao Rui. Actually, deep down in his heart, he really didn't want to separate mother and son, but it wouldn't work for Xiao Rui if this continued. He was worried that Xiao Rui would become Li Fen number 2. Children need a normal family. Look for another guardian, Xiaoling asked softly. Well, find a family in the family who is willing to adopt Xiao Rui and raise it for Su Tang. Don't worry, Su Tang has a good relationship with the tribe, and there will be a lot of people who are willing to adopt Xiao Rui, Li Lei said. Xiaoling nodded and said nothing more, but there was something on her mind in her eyes. The family of 3 finished their honeymoon, and sure enough, they returned to the country and went to the hospital where Su Tang and Li Rui were treated. They went to see Li Rui first. The child was lying on the hospital bed with a sling bottle inserted into his body. His little face was angry and twisted. He was yelling at the nurse who was changing his dressing, "I don't want my mother. Bad mother. I want daddy. I want daddy to come and see me. Wow wow wow." While arguing, I cried. I have set up a scheduled release. The scheduled option is to select one every 5 minutes. In order to ensure that the order of chapters is correct, I set one chapter each at 2000 hours, 2005, and 2010. I will release it at this time in the future. I want to be a good punctual kid. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 924. Chapter 924. Moving back to the headquarters. Li Lei walked into the ward and said to him warmly, "Dad is here." Li Rui, who was on the hospital bed, was overjoyed at first. "Dad," soon, he turned around and saw Xiaoling and Xiao Shaowai following behind, and immediately started making a fuss. "Bad woman. Get out. Li Shaowai, you two get out. Get out." As he said this, he picked up the water glass and threw it at them. The child was weak and his accuracy was not good enough. Xiaoling pulled Xiao Hui and got out of the way easily. Li Lei grabbed Li Rui's hand and said with a stern face, "Xiao Rui, don't be rude. Your aunt Xiaoling and brother Shaowai are here to see you. You have to get along well with them, you know." "I don't want them to come see me," the child still shouted. "What a stinky aunt and stinky brother. Without them, I wouldn't be called an illegitimate child. Let them die. All die." Li Lei frowned. "Who told you to have an illegitimate child?" He had already ordered his subordinates not to make irresponsible remarks about Li Rui's origin. How could someone without foresight touch this taboo? Unexpectedly, Li Rui said, "It's what my mother said. She said that people outside are laughing at me for being an illegitimate child. If there hadn't been that stinky woman, she could have been your wife. We are a family of 3 and it's legitimate." Unexpectedly, it turned out to be Su Tang? How does she usually teach her children? Li Lei's eyebrows furrowed even more, and he began to reflect on whether he was right or wrong in ignoring Li Rui in recent years. "I originally thought that Su Tang would be a good mother, but now it seems that she is too careless about her children, beating and scolding her at will, and saying all the things that should not be said to her children. What will happen if things continue like this? He was about to say something when suddenly, he heard a soft and waxy voice interjecting, "Xiaorui, even if you have me and your mother now, you are still your father's son. Your mother lied to you. Even if your father doesn't get along with you, when your mother gets married, only your mother's status will be affected. You will always be the young master of the Li family." "You lied," Li Rui yelled instinctively, but his mind was confused by Xiao Hui. Xiao Shaowai was still soft and waxy. He took a few steps forward and took Li Rui's hand. "Mom always told me to treat you well because you are my brother. You see, no one has ever told you except your mother. You are an illegitimate child. In fact, she is the only one who regards you as an illegitimate child. My father, my mother, and other uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters all regard you as the noble young master of the Li family. I have you. A lot of the same, isn't it?" Li Rui was even more dizzy. He opened his mouth and wanted to refute, but he didn't know where to start. Li Lei glanced at Xiao Shaowai. This kid was really learning and using things. He had just taught him how to outsmart him a few days ago. At this time, he started to drive a wedge between Li Rui and Sutang. "Shaowai," he called with some warning. "No matter what, Sutang is Li Rui's biological mother. Xiao Shaowai's instigation is a bit too much." Xiaoling glared at him. "Li Lei, come out here and let the two brothers talk." Li Lei didn't expect his wife to be so protective of his son, and now he became distressed. In this situation, it was clear that Xiao Hui had turned on the deception mode and was preparing to brainwash Li Rui to tell him how bad his own mother was. But what about Li Rui? Bai Shaowai is too stupid, and he will definitely get caught up in it. Xiaoling gritted her teeth and lowered her voice and laughed. "Sutang can beat her son so cruelly, why don't you let Li Rui be more careful with her? Do you have to wait until Li Rui loses his life before you regret it?" Li Lei felt a chill in his heart, and after thinking that what she said made sense, he followed her out. Xiao Shaowai was left alone, mumbling and wondering what he and Li Rui were talking about. Xiaoling stood at the door of the ward and looked at the situation inside for a while through the small glass window. Xiao Shaowai blinked his watery glasses and looked at Li Rui sincerely, dancing and saying something. At first, Li Rui was very guarded, but as he spoke, he slowly relaxed and showed a confused look. Later, he started asking Shaowai questions, and still later, the two brothers hugged each other while crying and laughing. Looking at Li Rui crying loudly in Xiao Shaowai's arms, Xiaoling fell silent. What kind of magic power does this child have that he can defeat a little demon king so quickly? Li Lei also followed her and opened the window to watch. Seeing this scene, he shook his head and exclaimed, "Maybe I can really retire early." Xiaoling rolled her eyes at him, who didn't allow Xiao Hui to speak just now. Li Lei pretended to smile stupidly. However, he smiled, and he also understood in his heart that now, I am afraid that Xiao Hui will make Sutang miserable in front of Li Rui. Will Li Rui be able to get along well with his mother in the future? Looking at the child's injuries, Li Lei said, "We need to find a foster home for him as soon as possible." Xiaoling also looked at Li Rui, who was crying heartbrokenly in the ward, and remained silent for a long time. "Xiaoling, I was thinking." Xiaoling was quiet and spoke slowly, "Li Rui is your child. Everyone knows that it is not suitable to be fostered anywhere. No matter how high-sounding the reasons are, he was abandoned by both parents. It's better for us to raise him by ourselves, just like Xiao Shaowai, so that the two brothers can be companions." Li Lei was stunned. "Are you willing to raise him?" "He's not your biological child," Xiaoling said with a charming smile. "If he were your biological child, I would have strangled him to death and thrown him into the sea, so I wouldn't raise him. But this child is so pitiful, Just think of it as my Holy Mother's glory. For some reason, even though she had hated the naughty kid Li Rui before, she felt very sad when she saw him lying on the hospital bed with scars on her face. She felt very sorry for this child who did not get the love of his father and his mother. How pitiful and lonely this child is, and how frightened he must be when he is beaten to death by his biological mother. That's why I was holding Xiao Shui and crying like this at this time. Xiaoling raised her head and looked at Li Lei seriously. Go to the relevant department to go through the custody procedures and change Li Rui's guardian from Su Tang to you. In this way, he will really be the legitimate young master of the Li family. Our newly built the house is very big. Let's tidy up a room for him next to Xiao Hui's room. In the future, the two brothers will play together and their relationship will be very good when they grow up. There won't be any troubles like brothers fighting each other. She is considerate in every aspect. Li Lei asked in surprise, new house? Are you planning to move back to the headquarters, Xiaoling? Yes, Xiaoling smiled slightly. During this period, it was very hard for you to travel back and forth between the country and the headquarters in order to accommodate me. I have thought about it. Since I have to move sooner or later, why not move right away? Let Xiao, there are many uncles and children in Huiye headquarters, which is conducive to cultivating relationships. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 925. Chapter 925, he was shot while lying down. As for Li Lei, he doesn't have to work so hard. Li Lei felt tenderness in her heart, and she knew that everything she did was for him. What about your usual singing and announcements? He asked. Xiaoling looked at him affectionately and said, where can I sing instead of singing? I will build a special studio at the headquarters. I can record songs directly there. Nowadays, flying is very convenient. If you want to shoot outdoor scenes, you can find me Wei and the others can go at any time. Besides, she said, I want to gradually retire. Semi-retired, Li Lei was a little surprised. Well, Xiaoling said, I no longer accept commercial endorsements or commercial performances, and only keep the purest song releases and concerts. Now I have neither fame nor money, why should I make myself so tired? It's good to do something interesting, and I'll spend the rest of my time with you, Xiao Shui, and, by the way, Li Rui. She knew that he could not abandon Li Rui. Instead of fostering her in someone else's home and making others criticize her, she might as well choose the best way and raise him directly by her side. However, Li Lei said, I have no problem with you semi-retiring. I just hope you are happy. However, Xiaoling, you know that Xiao Rui hates you a little. You have to be careful about him harming you when we are under the same roof in the future. How can a child harm me? Xiaoling smiled, don't worry, Xiao Hui is watching, and Xiao Hui is much smarter than him. Besides, how do you know that he won't slowly fall in love with me? She has always had a good relationship with her children. She also had a hidden meaning, just think of it as a woman's selfishness. Since Su Tang planned to use the child to rob Li Lei, then she cut off Su at the source. Tang's tool. Winning Li Rui to his side, let's see how Su Tang keeps jumping around. Was it a waste of that woman's smart life to be confused about such a big thing and beat her child? Or beat the child to death? Do you still expect your children to continue to love her and protect her? Innocent. Li Lei lowered his head and kissed her. Okay, then we will take Xiaorui over and raise him. Originally, he planned to raise Li Rui directly next to Su Tang, so that Su Tang would have someone to rely on when he grew old. But who knew her bipolar disorder could be so severe? I almost beat the child to death. That day, when he went to a psychiatrist to inquire about Su Tang's condition, the doctor said, Mr. Li, you must pay special attention to the safety of your children. It is said that tiger poison cannot eat its seeds, but bipolar disorder is an exception. A mother suffering from this disease will they think that leaving children in the world is suffering, and they sometimes kill them in order to help them escape. Li Lei was frightened when he heard this. Su Tang's condition is no longer suitable for raising Li Rui. Xiaoling smiled at him. It was enough to raise one child or two. Anyway, it wouldn't take much effort to raise one more Li Rui. She could provide the child with good food and drink, and make sure he didn't go astray. There is no need to make any big achievements. In the ward, Li Rui was almost crying. Li Lei and Xiaoling opened the ward door and walked in again. Li Lei first touched Xiao Shaowai's head, then took Li Rui from his arms and carried him into his arms. As soon as his father hugged him, the child started crying again. "Dad. Dad is here," Li Lei coaxed softly. "From now on, how about you live with Dad? We live in Dad's house with my brother and Aunt Xiaoling. Our family of 4 will never be separated." "Okay," Li Rui cried and agreed. "Dad, why did you come to see me? You don't know how terrible my mother was that day. The beating hurt me so much. She didn't listen no matter how much I begged her. We've Dad and Aunt Xiaoling never spank children. It will be safe when you come here," Li Lei said softly. Xiaoling suddenly couldn't bear to listen. She was fooling Li Lei, who was planning to beat Xiao Hui. If it weren't for this pirate wedding, Xiaowai would have eaten a meal of fried pork with bamboo shoots. She looked at Xiao Hui with some sympathy. Xiao Shaowai, who didn't know the truth, suddenly felt a little frightened when she saw it. "Xiao Rui doesn't seem to hate me so much," Xiaoling asked Shaowai in a low voice. Shaowai proudly puffed out his little chest. "Of course, I told him that my mother is the best mother in the world. She can tell many bedtime stories and take me to many places to play. I'm so jealous. Xiao Rui used to hate you because he thought you were not good to Aunt Sutang, but I told him that those were all lies made by Aunt Sutang. Even if Xiao Rui still doesn't like you now, he won't treat you right. You have a deep hatred." Xiaoling looked at her son in surprise. This little head is really full of wisdom. He can coax others into submission with just a few words. He will definitely be able to make a big difference when he grows up. She smiled and touched her son's little head happily. "Why do you all like to touch me so much?" Xiao Shaowai complained in a low voice. "I can't grow taller." Xiaoling smiled again and couldn't help but touch her a few more times. The 4 of them had a harmonious atmosphere. Over there, Li Lei was saying to Li Rui, "When your illness gets better, Dad will go through the discharge procedures for you. What kind of room do you like? Dad will ask someone to clean it for you, and you will live in it from now on next door to Shaowai. You can play with him." "Okay." Li Rui was very happy and shouted, "I like the ones with big dinosaurs." Li Lei promised to build him a dinosaur room. However, a sharp female voice came from in front of the door. "I don't agree. No one can take the child away from me." Everyone turned around and saw Sutang arriving at the door at some point. He was wearing a blue and white striped hospital gown. His long hair was a little messy, his chest was heaving, and he was looking at everyone in the room with red eyes. Li Rui was so frightened that he shrank behind Li Lei. Ever since he was almost beaten to death, he had been very afraid of this mother. Sutang looked at Li Lei and shed tears. "Master, you have taken away my love, are you going to take away my son? Give the child back to me, okay? Don't listen to that woman's instigation, she will die, my sons." She pointed at Xiaoling, looking like she had been wronged. Xiaoling felt like she was shot while lying down. She didn't even do anything, but someone came up and attacked her indiscriminately. However, she was too lazy to talk nonsense, so she pulled Xiao Shaowai back a few steps and silently watched Li Lei's answer. "He will deal with the women he messed with, huh?" Li Lei had a headache. He used to think Sutang was a very good woman, but why has she become more and more paranoid and unreasonable recently? "Sutang," he said to her patiently, I know you are reluctant to let go of Xiaorui, but in your current condition, the doctor said you are no longer suitable to raise Xiaorui, so I plan to keep the child by my side and take good care of it. He is too young to be left alone. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 926. Chapter 926 Protecting Xiaorui. Su Tang staggered back and shook his head. I don't believe it. It must be that woman, it must be that woman who instigated you, right? She wants to take away my son. Yes Yingling, give me back my son. Tears fell from Su Tang's face. She suddenly rushed towards Xiaoling and tore her violently. Xiaoling was caught off guard and was pulled unsteadily. She fell backwards and hit the corner of the hardwood table. A burst of severe pain came, and she let out a small cry of pain. She tried to stand firm, but unexpectedly she felt dizzy and spinning. She didn't know what was wrong with her. Her face suddenly turned pale and she fell to the ground. Su Tang also stepped forward to tear her apart. That's enough. Su Tang, Li Lei had already rushed up, grabbed Su Tang, and dragged her aside. Regardless of Su Tang's feelings, he stepped forward to see Xiaoling, half knelt beside her and took her into his arms. Xiaoling, are you okay? He lowered his head and saw that her face was still so pale. There was sweat on his forehead, and for some reason, it was even difficult to breathe. He looked at him weakly, as if he was about to faint at any time. Li Lei's heart skipped a beat. She was acting like this, and it was definitely not just because of being pushed. What happened to Xiaoling? Is she sick? He lifted her up and said, I'll take you to the doctor. After saying that, he strode out. Xiao Shaowai looked at his parents worriedly, and instinctively wanted to follow them to find a doctor. However, when he turned around and saw Li Rui on the hospital bed, he saw Li Rui looking at Su Tang not far away with a horrified expression. His body curled back as hard as he could, looking very scared. Xiao Shaowai sighed in his heart and stayed beside the hospital bed. Over there, Su Tang was sitting slumped, muttering to herself, he pushed me, he actually pushed me. It was clearly a sunny hour in the afternoon, but her words sounded a little scary. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at Li Rui on the hospital bed fiercely. Little bastard, are you very proud of yourself? You would rather have that than my mother. I'll beat you to death. I'll beat you to death, she suddenly said. He rushed up, raised his hand and hit Li Rui. Li Rui burst into tears. Mom, stop fighting. Mom, I was wrong. Twisted his little body to dodge, but it was useless. Su Tang's slaps still fell down all over his face. The nightmare came back, and Li Rui's mind was in chaos. The scene of him being beaten to near death that day was constantly intertwined with the fierce face of his mother in front of him. He screamed and cried. When he struggled, the infusion tube fell off his arm, taking a person with him. Strings of blood beads. Xiao Hui on the side also shouted, don't hit Xiaorui. He tried his best to pull Su Tang, but Su Tang violently shook him away. Xiao Shaowai was thrown to the ground, his head hit the hard leg of the bed, and his body fell into a large piece of broken infusion bottle glass. He immediately started bleeding and was very painful. But he ignored the pain and went to pull Su Tang away again. This time, Su Tang pushed him away even more. His body was dripping with water, stained with glucose solution, broken glass, and his own blood. His eyes scanned the surroundings, and soon he found a red button on the bedside. He spotted the gap and got in, pressing the button hard. Button then pounced on Li Rui, using his own body to protect Li Rui. Su Tang's slaps continued to hit his head and face. Seeing Xiao Hui protecting Li Rui, She was extremely angry and sneered cruelly, "Okay, very good, your mother is a bitch, and you are a too. You want to be a hero, right? Okay. I will satisfy you. I'll beat you to death as well." She picked up the overturned four-pole and hit Xiao Hui hard with the steel pipe of the four-pole. Xiao Hui groaned as the pipe was smashed down, a fishy sweetness filled his throat, and blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. However, he still threw himself on Li Rui and did not let go. Even if Su Tang's second and third tubes hit him, he still took it hard, but Li Rui in his arms was not hurt at all. Li Rui looked at him with wide eyes, not knowing whether it was because of fear or something, but his mind went blank. "Stop it! Stop it! Nurse, send the patient back to the room quickly." Suddenly, several unfamiliar voices rang. It was the doctors who heard the emergency bell and went to the ward. They were shocked to find that Su Tang was beating the two children on the bed like crazy, and they hurriedly stopped them. Soon, Su Tang was pulled away and sent back to his ward. The doctors quickly looked at the two children. "Young Master Xiaowai, young Master Rui, are you okay? These two children are the only two precious sons of the current head of the Li family. Even if one of them has an accident, their hospital will can't bear it." The doctors were extremely nervous and rushed to treat them. "I'm fine." Xiao Hui's voice was a little weak, but his words were sober. "You guys take a look at Xiao Rui first. His old injury has not healed, and he was beaten many times, ahem." As he spoke, he vomited out another mouthful of blood. "Young Master Xiaowai," the doctors exclaimed. Xiao Hui held on and said, I may have broken ribs or flesh injuries, it doesn't matter. Although he is small and weak, he has practiced some kung fu with his uncle and father, and he is relatively clear about his physical condition. Know what kind of situation will cause big problems, and what kind of situation can still survive." But even though he said this, the doctor did not dare to neglect it. "Rib fractures. It's already very serious, okay. Let's see if Li Lei doesn't skin them." They pushed the two children as quickly as possible to take X-rays and conduct a comprehensive physical examination. After confirming that the injuries were really just some fractures, muscle injuries, and the internal organs were all fine, they breathed a sigh of relief. After treating the two children, they were pushed back to the ward. Xiaowai was worried that Su Tang would make a comeback and ask to stay in the same ward as Li Rui. The doctors agreed and added another bed next to Li Rui's original bed for little Xiaowai to lie on. The medical staff left and the ward became quiet. Li Rui finally came back to his senses and asked dully, "Why are you helping me? His mother looked so scary just now." He thought he was dead this time, but he didn't expect that Xiaowai risked his life to save him. Even if his mother don't let go even after being beaten like that. At that time, Li Rui was petrified, staring blankly at the injured Xiao Hui, not knowing how to react, but he felt an unprecedented sense of safety. How should I put it? It's like, as long as Xiaowai is here, no one can hurt him even a little bit. Even his mother never gave him this sense of security. Xiao Xiaowai also had an 4 drip on his arm, and all the injuries in his body were hurting. However, he smiled heartlessly, because, I am Xiao Rui's brother. Xiao Rui, don't worry, I will always protect you. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xiao Weining. Chapter 927. Chapter 927 Unexpected Good News. Li Rui was stunned. Is it because of this? Brother, what exactly is a brother? I still remember that my mother gritted her teeth and said that Yexing Ling and her son Xiaowai were not good people and they were all trying to harm him. But when he was about to be beaten to death by his mother, it was brother Xiaowai who saved him. Brother, Li Rui shouted out unknowingly. Xiao Xiaowai was startled, and then responded with a bright smile, Hey, brother. This was the first time he was called brother, and it felt really great. He turned his head and looked at his brother's side face and giggled for a while. From now on, he will have his own responsibility, to take good care of his brother, protect his brother, and be the best brother in the world. I laughed for a while, then felt a little worried. Why haven't my parents come back yet? How are they doing? Mom, will everything be okay? He couldn't help but press the emergency bell again and summoned a doctor. Is my mother okay? The doctor smiled. Don't worry, young master, my wife is fine. Mr. Lee is accompanying her for examination. Xiao Shaowai blinked in confusion. Are you okay? Why do we still need to check if everything is fine? The doctor told him, young master, please take good care of yourself. Mr. Lee said that he and his wife will come to see you tomorrow. There will be a surprise. What's the surprise? Xiao Shaowai showed a very cute expression and acted cute to the doctor. The doctor said, of course, this kind of surprise will have to wait until Mr. Lee and Madam Lee tell you in person. I won't tell you. Young master, you can rest in peace. Madam doesn't know you are injured yet. She will definitely see you like this. She felt distressed and anxious, and it was not good for her health. Mr. Lee said. When the doctor said this, he couldn't help but look at him with a smile and sympathy. If you don't take good care of your injuries, you will still look like this, well, half dead tomorrow. Mr. Lee said he would beat you. Ah dash. When did Dad become so cruel? Woohoo. Li Rui, who was in the next bed, looked at the doctor very warily. Don't beat my brother. In his impression, being beaten is a very terrible thing, even life-threatening. The child has a simple mind. Since Shaowai saved after seeing him, he regarded Xiao Hui as one of his own, and was very afraid that something bad might happen to Xiao Hui. On the contrary, Xiao Hui comforted him. It's okay, Xiao Rui. Dad must be scaring me. He has never hit me since I was a child. He said this, but he was not very confident in his heart. It's okay to have with Dad, but if he makes Mom sad, who knows if Dad will kill her. Xiao Shaowai was extremely melancholy. He will be nice to whoever is nice to him. It is so simple and crude, black and white. Xiao Shaowai was no longer depressed this time, and smiled. Well, let us brothers join forces and conquer the world. Brothers join forces and conquer the world. The two little guys cheered up. The doctor shook his head and left with a bitter smile, complaining in his heart that no matter how hard you two join forces, you can't beat your father, the boss of the mafia. Leaving the children's ward, he went to check on Su Tang's condition before returning to Xiaoling's VIP senior ward on the top floor. The ward covers a large area, more than 100 square meters, with hydroponic green foliage plants planted everywhere. It is very quiet, and the air exudes a faint natural fruit fragrance. Li Lei was sitting on the edge of the bed peeling an orange for Xiaoling. Circles of golden peel were spinning and peeling off from his fingers, like art. They say sour girls and hot girls, you like eating sour food so much, you must be again this time, son. Yes, classmate Xiaoling is pregnant again. The baby came very quietly, with no signs of pregnancy at all. It was almost 2 months old, and the careless classmate Xiaoling didn't notice it. If it weren't for the push she received from Su Tang this time, some symptoms of anemia appeared, which made Li Lei nervous and took her for a comprehensive examination. He didn't know that he wouldn't be aware of the arrival of the baby until the year of the monkey and the horse. Once he heard that he was pregnant with a child, classmate Li Xiaoli was so happy that he hugged her and spun her around 3 times on the spot. When she was pregnant with little Shaowai, she went through too many hardships, a heart-wrenching separation, and mistakenly thought that the child was Peixian's. All these things made Li Lei never experience the expectation and joy of being an expectant father, but not this time. It's the same, this time, they are married, Xiaoling is by their side, and the child will be carefully conceived under the expectation and care of the parents until birth. He wanted to make up for all the debts he owed her. I won't let you suffer this time. Lilay kissed her forehead and opened the best ward in the hospital for her so that she could rest assured to raise her baby. The doctor said that her progesterone was somewhat low and she was at risk of miscarriage, so she needed to rest for a while. He was extremely nervous and stayed by her side every step of the way. Only left for a few minutes. It was the doctor who invited him out alone and told him about Xiao Shaohui and Li Rui being injured by Sutang. Even if Sutang was kind to him, this time, he had to start to feel disgusted. Even if she beat her own child, now she even beats little Shaohui. Or at such a critical moment as Xiaoling's pregnancy. Does she know how difficult it is to have this child? Xiaoling suffered so much and even stabbed her abdomen with a knife in order not to lose her virginity to Pei Xian. For a time, she thought she would never be able to get pregnant. She was so heartbroken. If it hadn't been for the medicine given by Wei Lingnan later, maybe getting pregnant again in this life would be just a dream. Now that she is finally pregnant, he will not allow anything to affect her. Shaohui needs to take good care of his injuries, Li Lei told the doctor. You must appear in front of Xiaoling tomorrow with the least injured state, otherwise. He smiled ferociously, showing his white teeth. I'll beat him to death. So, this is a tragedy. The doctor's message to Xiao Shaohui, otherwise I'll beat you up, was definitely a euphemism. The correct one should be, otherwise I will beat you to death. Poor little Shaohui has now become a child whose father does not care for him or his mother does not love him, because the stupid pregnant classmate Xiaoling almost forgot about him and only casually asked where he was. After learning that he was playing with brother Li Rui, I never cared about him anymore. All her thoughts were on the child in her belly. I would like to have a daughter. She stretched out her hand to gently caress her belly, with a peaceful smile on her face. I already have 2 sons. It would be great if this baby is a daughter. 2 sons. Yes, Xiaoling said softly, since you accept him as your son, he is also my son. Since becoming pregnant, classmate Xiaoling's motherly glory has become more and more abundant. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 928. Chapter 928 is here to stimulate you. Li Lei took her into his arms very gently. This girl is always so kind. Even if she sometimes looks fierce, proud, and full of thorns, when she really encounters major problems, she is softer and more compassionate than anyone else. How could he not like it? He looked at her tenderly. You have the final say as to where Xiaorui belongs. If she likes him, keep him by his side. If she doesn't like him, let him send Xiaorui away. In this life, he will give Xiaorui good material protection and take care of Xiaorui's food and clothing. But where the child lives and who he plays with are all decided by Xiaoling. Xiaoling ate the oranges he peeled and felt a little sleepy. She said in a daze, let him live with Shaohui. I think they get along well and it's good to have a companion together. As she said that, she gently stroking her still flat belly, for the sake of Shaohui being nice to Xiaorui, I hope Xiaorui will be nice to the baby as well. Li Lei smiled, leaned down and gently put his ear on her belly. Feel the soft rise and fall of her belly, but otherwise find nothing. Xiaoling laughed at him. It's only been less than 2 months, why are you anxious? It will take several weeks before you can hear the little one's movements. She had been pregnant once, so she had some experience, and now she is very calm. Li Lei felt aggrieved. I want to say hello to the little one early, he whispered against her belly. Hi, baby, I'm Daddy. Dad is looking forward to you growing up quickly and healthy. With a soft smile on her lips, Xiaoling stretched out her fingers to fiddle with the ears of the man leaning against her belly and his somewhat messy short hair. It was a very comfortable touch, and she hummed vaguely. In the rare free time, the two of them cuddled up to each other for a long time. The next day, Li Lei first went to the ward downstairs to see Xiao Shuai. Seeing that the child had no visible injuries, he carefully told Xiaoling about the child's beating, so Tang attacked Xiao Rui again. Xiao Hui went up to stop him, but he wasn't seriously injured, just a bump on the foot of the bed, which has healed. Xiaoling was a little worried. I'll go see them. Li Lei helped her downstairs. In the children's ward, Li Rui was still lying on the bed with water in his mouth. In order not to worry her mother, Xiao Shuai was already sitting on the sofa beside the bed, pretending to be holding an adventure story and reading it to Li Rui. The pirate ship was as high as the sky and emerged from the distant horizon. It scared Lan Lan and his friends into screaming. The child described it vividly. Li Rui listened very intently. He didn't know that besides playing with those toys that were used to fight and kill, there were so many interesting things in the world. He is now hooked on listening to stories. Xiaoling stood by the door of the ward for a while without disturbing them. She was relieved to see that Shuai was fine. It seemed that the two children were getting along better than she imagined. Turning around, she pulled Li Lei out of the ward and walked along the corridor for a while. She sat down on the bench and said softly to him, "I'm tired. Go and make me a glass of water. I want fresh lemon and honey, sour and sweet." Li Lei said, "Where can I find fresh lemons and honey in the hospital? I asked the servant to bring them." "I don't care, I want you to take a bath now," she said coquettishly. "Don't you know that pregnant women can easily get into bad moods? If I can't drink lemon honey now, I will be very unhappy." Li Lei reluctantly agreed and told her to sit tight and not run around while he went all the way to find lemons and honey. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked away, she stood up, first called a bodyguard to follow, then asked the nurse's desk for the direction of Su Tang's ward, and walked over lightly. Heavy curtains were drawn in the ward. Without turning on the lights, it was broad daylight, but everything seemed very dark. Su Tang was sitting in the shadows, looking blank, wondering what he was thinking. Xiaoling called her. She raised her head and saw Xiaoling, with a look of resentment on her face. Seeing that Li Lei was not present, she didn't bother to pretend to be polite, and just said to Xiaoling coldly, "Go away, I don't want to see you." Xiaoling didn't. She closed the door with her bodyguards and sat down in the ward to relax. Su Tang was so angry that her lips trembled. "This is my place." "Really?" Xiaoling smiled. "Your food, clothing, housing, and transportation are all provided by our Li family. Every piece of fabric and every ornament on your body is a blessing from the Li family. Although everything in the world is not," Wang Tu's words seem inappropriate here, "but what qualifications do you have to tell me, the mistress of the Li family, to go away?" Su Tang's face was livid, and his ferocious eyes looked as if he wanted to eat her. "You are not worthy of being the mistress of the Li family." "Oh? I don't deserve it, but you do." Xiaoling was still calm and smiled softly. Su Tang stopped talking, but her cold eyes clearly told Xiaoling that, yes, she was the one who deserved it. "It's a pity that Li Lei doesn't like you." When Xiaoling started arguing with others, who did she lose to? He can make people angry to death and back to life with just one sentence, and he can poke people's pain with every sentence. That's why he has been so hated by people for 2 lifetimes. Su Tang was no exception. These days, she was suffering from bipolar disorder. Now she couldn't bear it anymore. She rushed forward and wanted to slap Xiaoling. "You bitch." However, the bodyguard beside Xiaoling firmly grabbed her wrist and threw her out effortlessly. There was a loud clang and Su Tang hit the iron bed in the corner, feeling pain all over his body. Her hair was messy and she was in a miserable state. She was about to get up and continue attacking Xiaoling when she heard Xiaoling say, "I advise you not to waste your efforts. Do you think I will come to see you without taking any defensive measures? Tell you, I am pregnant and will not put myself in danger." "What dash?" Su Tang opened his eyes in disbelief. You are pregnant." "Yes, Xiaoling smiled softly, thanks to your pushing yesterday, I found out that I am almost 2 months pregnant. Speaking of which, I have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I haven't noticed it yet, maybe I'm still drinking and eating randomly. Her voice was extremely happy, but in Sutang's ears, every word was like a knife cutting through her. Sutang unconsciously clenched his fists. No, it's impossible. How could this be pregnant? She doesn't believe it, she will never believe it. You lied to me, right? Sutangruo looked crazy and was about to rush forward, but was stopped by the bodyguard. Yes, Yingling, you must have lied to me, you just wanted to stimulate me, you just pretended to be pregnant. You are despicable and shameless. Oh, I came here to stimulate you. Xiaoling didn't hide it. This woman Sutang dared to hit Xiao Shuai. If she didn't provoke or retaliate, she wouldn't be called Xiaoling. However, the pregnancy is real. Li Lei and I have a very good relationship. It wouldn't be surprising if we have 10 or 8 more babies. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 929. Chapter 929, Can You Coax Girls? Her voice was clear and sweet, echoing in the silent ward. Sutang felt that there was a huge flame of jealousy burning in her heart, gnawing at her heart like thousands of ants, making her want to rush forward and tear the woman in front of her into pieces. However, she can't. The bodyguards next to Xiaoling looked at her eagerly. That was a line of defense that she simply could not break through. However, Xiaoling continued to provoke her. Sutang, you still want to be with Li Lei? Apart from anything else, your child abuse is already heinous. There are only 2 children in the Li family. Master, not only did you beat Li Rui almost to death, but you also treated Xiao Hui cruelly. Do you really think Li Lei doesn't care? Sutang's face was very ugly. She really couldn't control herself that day, so she beat Xiao Hui together. Speaking of which, she had long wanted to beat Xiao Hui to death. It was rare that the child couldn't think of it. How could she not fight if she went to protect Li Rui? If I didn't beat him to death on the spot, he would be lucky. Although, when she calmed down, she understood that hitting Xiaowai was against Li Lei's taboo, but she had been stimulated so much recently that she couldn't help it when her temper got angry. She looked at Xiaoling coldly. You did it on purpose. Xiaoling was slightly startled. What's the intention? Sutang glanced at the bodyguard on the side and sneered. You clearly knew that I was in a bad mood recently, so you deliberately let Xiao Hui into the ward to lure me into beating people, so that Li Lei would dislike me. You are so scheming. Xiaoling then realized that her words were probably meant for the bodyguard. Do you expect the bodyguard to tell these words to Li Lei? Xiaoling also laughed. It's useless. The bodyguards I can bring here must be my confidants. Sutang, I'm not like you. I have been pitifully living under the influence of others, and I have been living my whole life without even being able to find anyone who is loyal to me. As long as I am willing, there will be as many people as possible who are loyal to me, and there is no need to use Li Lei's manpower. She is the phoenix of the Xia family, she is proud of herself. And what about Sutang? Sutang is just a poor person who was adopted as a child and placed under the care of others. Her words pierced her heart, making Sutang's face turn blue and white, almost going crazy. Sutang took a deep breath, suppressed the raging anger in his chest, and told himself that there was no need to argue with this woman. He looked at Xiaoling faintly and said word by word, you will not end well. Her gaze made people feel chilled to the bottom of their hearts. For no reason, Xiaoling felt uncomfortable, as if those words were a curse coming from the depths of hell. She disliked this woman Sutang very much. She disliked her very much. However, she did not show this dislike on her face. She raised her chin slightly, made an arrogant and aloof posture, and said contemptuously to Sutang, "Really? In any case, I will not end well before, you would have had a bad end. In the next few days, someone would have sent you a lawyer's letter, accusing you of child abuse and depriving you of your custody rights to Li Rui. From now on, Li Rui will be raised by my side. I will treat him like my own child, he has enough time to forget you, the vicious biological mother." With this thought, he turned his love rival's child into his own child, and watched his love rival grit his teeth but feel helpless. It still feels quite refreshing. Xiao Ling smiled happily, looked at Sutang provocatively, and turned around to leave. Sutang was left alone. He grabbed a vase angrily and smashed it against the closed door. Xiao Ling returned to the corridor, and just when she was about to sit back on the bench she had separated from Li Lei, she saw a man walking slowly not far away, wearing a tailored sweatshirt, with one hand casually in his pocket, and the other one hand is holding a cup of lemon honey tea. The beautiful color flows lightly in the glass, making it charming. The man looked at her deeply with a pair of deep eyes. It was Li Lei. Xiao Ling stood still. Li Lei walked up to her, his voice a little low, "Why are you here? I've been looking for you for a long time." She tried to pass it by in an understatement, "I'm a little bored waiting, so I just took a walk." Just take a walk and walk to Sutang's ward. Li Lei didn't intend to let her go. Xiao Ling was speechless and stared at him angrily. How could this person ask questions knowingly? "Yes, I just deliberately put you away to cause trouble for Sutang." Now that he was suspicious, she simply stopped covering it up and said willfully, "She injured my son, of course I want to settle the score with her. It would be a shame if I didn't give her a beating." Li Lei frowned slightly. "Xiao Ling." Xiao Ling looked at his expression and felt very unhappy. How long had it been since he had to defend that woman? "I know she is your savior," Xiao Ling said, "so I don't want to embarrass you, so I sent you away to find her. However, can you also not embarrass me and just pretend that you didn't see this? I've seen it all, how can I pretend I haven't seen it?" "Li Xiaoli, I had a headache." "Why is this wife so uneasy? If she was smarter and did it more discreetly, he wouldn't know if he didn't know, but now he has clearly discovered the truth. How could it be possible to pretend that nothing happened?" Looking at Xiao Ling, Li Lei said, "You are pregnant. It is very dangerous to go to her like this. She is now in the stage of bipolar disorder and can easily hurt others. What should you do if you get hurt?" "I brought a bodyguard, how can I get hurt?" Xiao Ling said angrily, "I think you are afraid that I will bully her." "I. Dalu, let's go." She called her bodyguard, turned around and walked in the opposite direction of Li Lei. "Li Lei, Xiao Ling, wait." However, the angry classmate Xiao Ling ignored him at all and went back to the ward. Stinky Li Lei, bad Li Lei, she smashed things in her VIP ward of more than 100 square meters. "We are already married and still want to protect other women. Does he still have me in his heart? Humph." Hum shed several pillows, but still not satisfied with his anger, he smashed one of them directly into the face of Xiao Shaowai, who secretly opened the door and came in. "Mom!" Xiao Shaowai hugged the big feather pillow and cried out in grievance. Xiao Ling then stopped and pulled her son in front of her. She looked up and down to see if it was not damaged, and felt relieved. "Why are you here?" she asked. Xiao Shaowai blinked his beautiful eyes and said softly, "Dad just came to me and said that she made you angry and asked me to come and see if you have calmed down." "He won't coax me." Xiao Ling lost her temper again. "But how dare classmate Li Xiaoli I do?" Now, she was pregnant and moody, and he was really worried that he would stir up something bad in her, which would affect the child in her belly. Therefore, to be on the safe side, he could only entrust his son to come and see his wife. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 930. Chapter 930, Running Away from Home. Xiao Shaowai, however, couldn't do anything about his arrogant mother. Then I'll ask Dad to coax you. Speaking, he turned around and walked out of the ward door. Stop, Xiaoling was almost mad at the father and son. They were all avoiding her or something. Those who say a few words will leave. Don't you all want to see me? Xiao Shaowai nodded instinctively, looked at his mother's face, and shook his head hurriedly. Whoa! He wants to see the usually amiable mother who plays with him, but he doesn't want to see the mother in front of him who is so angry for some reason. The doctors, uncles, and nurses all said that the mother might not be emotionally stable now that she was pregnant with the baby, and she usually had to obey her when it came to anything. But, both he and the father obeyed her so much that they would call her immediately. As soon as I left, why did I feel that my mother was getting more and more angry? Poor classmate Xiao Shaowai, who is a straight man, has not learned the wise saying when a woman says she doesn't want it, she means she wants it. Dare you really leave when a woman chases you away? Just wait to endure even greater anger. Xia Xiaoling's classmate hit her son with a pillow again. Go and tell your father that neither of you is here anymore, Oh. Xiao Shaowai, who saw his mother's bad temper for the first time, hugged a big feather pillow in confusion and walked out of the ward in a daze. Xia Xiaoling would be angry at this stupid father and son if she was left alone. No one wants to coax me, I want to run away from home. She looked at the empty ward and made a vow. Just do it, and immediately, Xia Xiaoling picked up her handbag and disappeared into the hospital. One day later, in China, in my villa. In the courtyard surrounded by red walls and ivy, the maid opened the beautifully carved wooden door and was startled when she saw her. Miss, oh no, madam, you are back. What's wrong with you? Xiaoling walked in the door angrily and said to the maid, don't tell that Lilei that I'm back. The maid said, but dash. Before she finished speaking, Xiaoling stopped. I saw that in the bright living room, large tracts of sunshine poured in from the floor-to-ceiling windows. On the fabric sofa covered with thick lace cushions, a man was half relying leisurely, with his slender legs crossed and teasing a baby in his hand. The cat's eyes flashed with a faint smile. Xiaoling dropped the bag in her hand to the floor and was speechless. Lilei. On the sofa, the handsome man raised his head and smiled at her. Hey, Xiaoling, it's a bad habit to disappear just after getting married. In his hand, the cat Mao Duanzi meowed softly. Xiaoling was dumbfounded. Why are you here? In order to prevent him from finding her, she turned off her phone and flew back without telling anyone. She thought she could run away from home completely, which made him often anxious. It feels so good to coax her in the future and not dare to mess with her. Who knows? How long have you been away from home? He arrived at her destination first. Classmate Li Xiaoli, I said proudly, yesterday I went to the ward to look for you and found that you were not there and your bag was missing. You didn't answer the phone when I called you, so I guessed that you ran away from home. How could he not know after so many years? Is your wife very stupid? Especially now that I am still pregnant and stupid. When I am angry, I must go back to the place I am most accustomed to and familiar with, which of course is my home, this villa surrounded by red walls. Lilei came immediately on a special plane, and it turned out faster than her. 10 minutes ago, when he appeared in the living room and told the maid that he was here to wait for Xiaoling, the maid looked in disbelief. As a result, she came back just 10 minutes later. No wonder the maid looked like she had seen a ghost. Xiaoling also looked like she had seen a ghost. You are following me? Lilei shrugged and pointed to his head. IQ, dear. You hate it. She threw the pillow at him again. The man on the sofa stood up with a smile, ignored her struggle, hugged her gently, and whispered in her ear, don't be angry with me, Okay. Humph, she hummed. In fact, when she was on the plane, most of her anger had dissipated. Now when she opened the door and saw such a big surprise, she deeply felt that he cared about her, and her huge anger had long since disappeared. However, due to face, he refused to give in. Lilei smiled and coaxed her again, kissing her ear gently. "Shall I prepare something delicious for you?" "I want strawberry pudding," she said in a somewhat arrogant tone, "with double caramel." Okay, he smiled happily and made his wife happy. Everyone had a good life, so what does strawberry pudding mean? Classmate Li Xiaoli happily went to the kitchen, and soon he brought out a sweet and delicious strawberry pudding and placed it in front of his wife. Xia Xiaoling's classmate moved her index finger and ate everything. "Perhaps it was because of eating sweets that I felt better." Classmate Li Xiaoli rubbed her shoulders and legs. "Are you not angry anymore?" She shook her head in embarrassment and suddenly asked, "Where is Xiao Hui?" "That child," Li Lei said nonchalantly, "I left him in a foreign hospital. What's the use of coming here if he can't even coax his mother? He will be punished to accompany Xiao Rui, and we will come back together when Xiao Rui recovers." In fact, it was because Xiao Hui himself was still injured. Su Tang beat him so hard that he vomited blood and fractured his bones. Although it didn't look like he was seriously injured from the outside, he still needed to rest and take medicine. He often stayed with his mother. Sooner or later will reveal the secret. So, let's just take advantage of this opportunity and let him recuperate there. Classmate Xia Xiaoling did not doubt that he was there, but nodded. "That brat is really stupid. What should I do if I can't coax girls and can't get a wife in the future?" Li Lei laughed and said, "Why can't my son get a wife?" Classmate Xia Xiaoling glanced at him silently, and suddenly felt that what he said made sense. The father and son were so stupid together. Since the father could marry a wife, there might be a girl as cute and kind as her. No, why do you think the other party is stupid and willingly marry Xiao Xiaowai? Thinking about this, classmate Xia Xiaoling felt relieved. Poor classmate Li Xiaoli didn't know that he was being complained about by his wife again. He massaged classmate Xia Xiaoling until she felt comfortable. He saw the right moment and said casually, "We're already married, why do you keep running here? Didn't we set up a new home on Yunhu Island?" Yunhu Island is another wealthy area in the city, far away from here, and the houses are all beautiful. Li Lei and Xiaoling bought their wedding house there. Xiaoling was stunned for a moment, and then she remembered that she was angry. She instinctively wanted to go back to her parents' home, her own home, and she had long forgotten about the new house that she had not lived in for a night since she got married. Looking at Li Lei's expectant eyes, she said, "Then let's pack up and move in." End of this chapter.